An interesting question has been raised recently as to whether or not you can use self-defense against a child, i.e. someone either under the age of 18 or even under the age of 10, which of course is the age of criminal responsibility in the UK. And why is that important? Well, because someone under the age of 10 cannot commit a crime, but they can behave aggressively and they can be doing acts which would otherwise amount to a crime. But if they are attacking you and they are a child, the question therefore remains is, can you use self-defense against a child? Now, let me just start by saying this video in no way is intended to encourage people to go out there and start attacking children, or even readily or easily using force against a child unless the circumstances really warrant it. But with that said, here's the broad legal position. The law does not distinguish a lower or even an upper age range of a person against whom you use reasonable force that is necessary in self-defense. It is still Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act 1967, which permits the use of force that is necessary and reasonable in its execution. Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act provides that you can use force in the prevention of crime, affecting or assisting in a lawful arrest of offenders or suspected offenders, although Section 3 only applies to crime, but I'll come back to that in a moment. The basic principles for self-defense were set out in the Palmer case, which is the most frequently cited case in respect of self-defense. This was from 1971. The common law approach expressed in Palmer is that it is both good law and good sense that a man who is attacked may defend himself. It is both good law and good sense that he may do so, but only what is reasonably necessary. And so there is a clear overlap between Section 3 and standard self-defense. So ultimately there are a number of provisions for self-defense, both in common law and in statute. So a person may use reasonable force that is necessary in the circumstances for the purposes of self-defense, defense of another, defense of property, prevention of crime, and lawful arrest. Now the courts have decided, specifically in the case of Crown and Williams, that there are two questions that need to be decided. First of all, was the use of force necessary in the circumstances, i.e. was there a clear need for use of force at all? And secondly, was the force reasonable in the circumstances? But more importantly, these are to be decided on facts as genuinely and honestly believed by the person asserting them. So to some extent that test is subjective, i.e. the fact genuinely and honestly believed to be the case by the person using force. But there is also an objective, what does a reasonable person think? An objective test to this, which is in those circumstances that's believed to be by the person using force, was that use of force reasonable in those circumstances? So taking an extreme example where you may have, say, an 8 or a 9-year-old child with a baseball bat and they are coming up to attack you and hit you with this bat and you have no way of running away and nowhere to go, and therefore you conclude in that moment that the use of force is necessary to defend yourself to prevent this child from hitting you with the bat and causing serious injury. Let's say that in that moment you decide that pushing the child to the ground is necessary and reasonable force so as to not get hit with this baseball bat, even though it is a child and that child is under the age of criminal liability. If you are then accused of assaulting that child for pushing the child to the ground, you would most likely have a valid defense of self-defense, even though it was against a child, because it is likely, in my view of those circumstances, that the use of force was necessary and reasonable for you to get away, to prevent yourself from being hit. However, quite clearly, if you removed this bat from the child and then hit the child with the bat, that would quite clearly, I hope, not be reasonable force. And as with most cases, there will be a consideration of all of the facts and circumstances. So albeit a rather odd question, I hope that helps to address it for you, and thanks for watching.